Welcome to your Best Defense podcast with Jacqui Ford. Passion, energy, and courage. Jacqui Ford is unintimidated and a bit untamed when she needs to be. Your best defense is a good offense. Jacqui Ford, not afraid of a fight, and always fighting for what is right.
All right, you're listening to Your Best Defense podcast. We are speaking to Oklahoma City criminal defense attorney, Jacqui Ford. Jacqui, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Well, we're going to just jump right into it because this is going to be an interesting podcast. Let's talk about, like when you have typical interaction with police. Basically, how to not get arrested. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I think the best way to avoid being arrested, clearly, is to not engage in criminal activity.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
But second, I advise people to avoid contact with law enforcement officers as much as possible, right? You can't get arrested if they're not in your presence. Mm-hmm. You can't get arrested if they're not coming for you, mm-hmm. right? So, unfortunately, we live in a world, I think, that is different than even where we lived when I grew up. This isn't Mayberry anymore. Mm-hmm. And law enforcement position is no longer to protect and serve the public. I know that. I've cross-examined them. They've testified to this under oath. Their mission, today's modern day police, is criminal law enforcement, not protecting and serving the community. So when you have that in mind, you need to understand that they're not necessarily your friends, and by calling or inviting them into your life may result in a less than pleasant experience, mm-hmm. right? So a lot of times, the police get called because there's some sort of domestic situation, mm-hmm. and you and your old lady are fighting, or he's being a jerk and she's being crazy, mm-hmm. and somebody wants somebody to leave, and the fight escalates, and ultimately somebody calls the police. Well, if you're not in fear of imminent bodily harm or danger, though there's probably bad things that are going to happen based upon that phone call, okay. right? A domestic situation has arisen, law enforcement is on their way, they are on their way armed and ready to diffuse a highly, highly, stressful situation, which puts them at great stress too. It increases their alertness, and they are there, you would hope, to just help you diffuse, but most likely someone gets arrested. So how do you not get arrested? Don't call the police on yourself. Mm-hmm. Don't call the police on your loved ones because you're mad and want to teach them a lesson. Mm-hmm. You should really reserve calling law enforcement into your life when it is the last option, when you cannot resolve it in any other way. So I think our problem that we have in this country right now is that we don't know our neighbors, and we don't know our law enforcement officers. We don't get to interact with them all the time. Mm-hmm. So they're not our friends, and they used to be, mm-hmm. But they're not now. Now they are here to arrest bad people and put them in jail. And when you know that that is their mindset, and that they approach every interaction with you ready and prepared to kill you if necessary, mm-hmm. then maybe you think twice about inviting them in unnecessarily. Okay. Does that make sense?
It does. Okay. It does. Let's talk about a typical traffic stop. You get pulled over, police come up, hopefully you have your seatbelt on.
Right.
You turned over, you're in an area where they come up to your car. What are some ways to respond in that type of a situation?
I advise everybody to handle law enforcement officers with respect. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they are not approaching that car expecting to encounter a good law-abiding citizen. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, in their training, and I know this from their own words and from speaking to their training officers, mm-hmm. they are approaching that situation, a normal traffic stop, assuming that you are a very, very bad person and that their life is in danger. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't like to function under fear. Mm-hmm. We know what happens to our bodies when we're in fear. We have mm-hmm. two options, fight or flight. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to tell you something. You can't flee mm-hmm. the police in a traffic stop. That's going to make it worse. Mm-hmm. And you also can't fight mm-hmm. the police officers in a traffic stop. Mm-hmm. So we need to make sure that we're not functioning from a place of fear, number one.
Okay.
Number two, answer only the questions that are asked of you, and don't try to explain anything. And you have to be kind of careful of some of the questions that they're asking, because their questions are designed to be very conversational, but what they're doing is seeking probable cause.
Okay.
They're asking you questions to determine whether or not they believe you're up to good or no good.
And this is kind of cop tricks, right?
Right.
So they interviewing, asking questions. Okay.
Right, and this is how they're trained, and it's been accepted by most courts most often. So when you know that cops are allowed to lie to you, and they are allowed to lie directly to your face, and nobody is going to do anything about that for you, then you now have to be suspect about some of the things that law enforcement is saying to you.
Okay.
They are not usually there to help you out of a bad situation, right? They've got you pulled over. You've already violated the law in their eyes. Their goal now is to get into the car, search the car, see if there's more criminal activity going on, ask you a battery of questions, ask your passengers a battery of questions. My advice to clients is this: if you've been pulled over on a traffic stop, treat the officer with respect. He hasn't done anything to you to earn anything other than respect. And he may or may not be respectful to you in return. That doesn't matter. We can't control that.
Right.
So you provide your driver's license, you provide your insurance verification. As the follow-up questions start coming in, I oftentimes tell my clients to politely refuse to answer those questions. Where are you going today, Miss Ford? Where are we traveling to? Where have we been? None of those questions are relevant to whether or not I was speeding. Okay, let's say I'm pulled over for speeding. Those questions are designed to ask me and my passenger what's going on, because in their training and experience, those answers not matching up give them what they believe to be probable cause, starts working towards probable cause to search your car, to search you, and to eventually arrest you. So these questions are not necessary for the purpose of their traffic stop. So I just advise my client to politely say, I've given you my driver's license and my registration. Is there anything else you need from me to complete this traffic stop? Now, depending on the temperature of our officer, that's either going to be received well or not well. We have business cards in our office that we printed out based upon Supreme Court cases and cases dealing with answering law enforcement questions. A lot of times clients get frustrated because they say, oh, I wasn't read Miranda. Well, Miranda, your Miranda rights that we've all heard, you know, right to an attorney and right to remain silent and all of this, are only applicable if you are in custody and being interrogated. Okay, so they don't have to read you Miranda to ask you where are you going, where have you been, what are your travel plans, right? What I tell my clients to do, and we've got business cards, and I'll just read it to you. It's on the back of our cards that we provide clients in the office. On the advice of my attorney, I respectfully decline to answer on the basis of the Fifth Amendment, which according to the United States Supreme Court protects everyone, even innocent people, from the need to answer questions if the truth might be used to create the misleading impression that they were somehow involved in a crime that they did not commit. Is this going to be well received? I guess it just depends on the police officer. The police officers who aren't going to like the tone of this podcast are the police officers who aren't going to like the tone of that response, okay? But always keeping your own personal cool, and you cannot help escalate the situation. But we've seen it on, you know, videos and the cop block of how these, you know, people are trying to avoid answering questions at DUI checkpoints. And the fact of the matter is, you have the right to refuse to answer those questions. If they want to arrest you, you have the right to refuse to answer questions then too. If it's going to get worse before it gets better anyway, then stop talking. That is a huge problem that people have. You have a very, very important Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. And it is there because it is a very important right. Exercise it. That's all I'm saying. So the less you say, the less information you can give to them to either rightfully or wrongfully believe that criminal activity is afoot, right? So I tell my clients, be respectful, answer the limited number of questions regarding your driver's license and your insurance, and the rest of it, you just need to kind of keep your mouth shut. And officer, I would like to not answer those questions at this time. Is there anything else you need from me for the purposes of this traffic stop?
And usually are they required to tell you what they pulled you over for within
Well, yeah, I think I think most police officers know that they have to tell you, they're going to have to tell somebody why they pulled you over. It's going to be in a PC affidavit at some point. So yeah, they should tell you why they pulled you over. Oftentimes they like to ask questions like, do you know why I pulled you over? Well, that's a tricky one, right? Okay. I'm asked that question. I have a lead foot. I get pulled over a lot. Sometimes I say, yes, Officer Smith, I was speeding. I apologize. I feel very comfortable interacting with law enforcement, okay? And I also understand that me acknowledging the fact that I was speeding is probably going to help me move this situation along. Okay. Sometimes maybe I don't know why I get pulled over. Sometimes I think it was speeding, but I'm not quite sure. And so sometimes I say, no, officer, why did I get pulled over? Because maybe he pulled me over for something other than speeding, and now I've just ponied up to no crime, right? And I'm not taking my own personal advice. So do as I say, not as I do. I don't like to answer that question. Do you know why I pulled you over? I think the much more appropriate question is the officer telling you why he pulled you over.
When do you consent to a search? They want to search your car.
Well, my advice is always don't consent ever. People ask me why. If I know there's nothing in my car, why would I not consent? Well, because unless nobody else has been in your car for the last entire time you've owned it, you probably don't know everything that's in your car. Okay. And law enforcement doesn't ask for your permission unless they need it. Okay? So they don't have a right to search your car without a warrant first or your consent, or they must be able to, in the future in legal documents, articulate reasonable facts that gave them a reason to believe that criminal activity was afoot before they searched that car. That right is so important. Why just give it away? That's kind of my position on consent. Why just give it away if people literally have lost their lives defending it? So I generally advise not to consent to a search. Sometimes, if you know the dog's coming anyway and you know you're about to get busted anyway, people are like, well, what do? I know what's going to happen. If it's going to happen, let it happen. Don't let your own words put you in the pokey. Don't say, oh, no, please, officer, don't search. Here's the marijuana in my console. You're hurting my ability to help you in the future, right? And law enforcement would disagree. They would say, oh, you're cooperating, and I'm gonna tell the DA, and that's gonna be great. That's just absolutely not true. I've represented well over 5,000 criminal defendants, and not a single district attorney has said, your client confessed and gave us over the smoking gun, so we're just gonna go ahead and let him slide on this one. That's a cop trick. This idea that if you just work with me, I can make this a lot better for you. They can, theoretically, by not arresting you. And what law enforcement officer do you think isn't going to arrest you with the marijuana in your car or the smoking gun in your car or whatever is in your car? So my advice, don't consent. My advice with respect to making voluntary statements, don't do it. If you're going to make a statement to law enforcement and you don't have a lawyer with you, you are doing yourself an incredible disservice. Call me. I have taken my clients in and made statements before, but those are strategic, thoughtful, meaningful decisions that we made together, not in a fast environment, not on the fly. You have to have the advice of counsel, and you have to have somebody representing your interest when you're talking to law enforcement, because they are not there to represent your interest. So you're protecting your Fourth Amendment right by not consenting to a warrantless search. Good job. Protect your Fifth Amendment right by not saying anything that can be used against you, because they will, if they can, use it against you. It might be used. It can and will be used against you. And the third important right is your Sixth Amendment right to an attorney. That's why you don't talk without the lawyer. That goes back to why do we hire lawyers? Because we have these important rights that need to be protected against government intrusion. The Fourth, Fifth, and the Sixth apply specifically to all of my clients. So you never want to waive any of them without the advice of counsel. You have a right to record law enforcement. I tell all of my clients to have a recording mechanism on your phone, and I don't mean your phone's recorder, because unfortunately, not all officers, but some officers will take your phone and destroy that. I advise my clients to put some sort of app on their phone, and there are plenty through the App Store that allow you to record law enforcement, and that recording is sent via the web to a streaming service, and it's there if and when your phone gets lost or broken or misplaced in the evidence room. I believe that any law enforcement officer who's doing his job and doing his job right would want that too. I advocate very strongly for police cameras, body cams, dash cams, interior car cams, because it protects everybody. It's not designed to punish the officer. It's designed to protect the citizen accused.
You've been listening to Your Best Defense podcast with attorney Jacqui Ford. See her website at fordlawokc.com.
Thanks for listening to Your Best Defense podcast. If you need a passionate, energetic, and unintimidated defense attorney, contact Jacqui Ford at fordlawokc.com or call 405-604-3200. Remember, your best defense is a good offense. Jacqui Ford, not afraid of a fight, and always fighting for what is right.